The big picture here for President Trump is that this investigation is metastasizing well beyond what Russia did. It now involves the president, his campaign, his former campaign manager, and his former national security advisor. Investigators want to talk to Jared Kushner and the top intelligence chiefs, and they've already got the public testimony from the former FBI director. And now that this is inside the White House, there's a lot of folks that work with the president that may find themselves called to testify to Mueller's investigation, which means what? More lawyers and more people involved. Let's return to the big scoop in the Wall Street Journal, that the president's conversation with his NSA chief wasn't just about trying to convince Comey to back off. Joined now by Paul Sonny, who covers national security, defense, and foreign policy for the Wall Street Journal. He was also a Moscow correspondent for them as well. Paul, welcome to the show. I want to talk specifically on this phone call. We knew earlier that the president, there was other reporting that the president had asked both Dan Coats, DNI, and Mike Rogers at NSA to see if they could convince Comey to back down on Mike Flynn. But it looks like this conversation was more than that. Explain.
So what we understand is after that clip from what we just heard from James Comey, after he came out and said that the investigation will determine whether or not there was any collusion between the campaign and Russia, we understand that Trump did, as you say, contact Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats and Admiral Mike Rogers, the head of the National Security Agency. And in a phone call with Mike Rogers, he asked that Mike Rogers come out and say that there's no evidence so far of collusion between the campaign and Russia. But also during that conversation, he expressed skepticism over the intelligence community's assessment that Russia intervened in the 2016 election.
I assume if he had a basis of why he doesn't believe it, it would have been reported by you. I mean, was there, do your sources not say what? Did the president have a rationale for why he questioned the Intelligence Committee on this? From
what we understand, and we have limited information on this, is that he was sort of asking to be walked through again why it is that the intelligence community unanimously came is so sure about the conclusion that they came to, that Russia did play a role in intervening in last year's election, and that in addition to that, he was trying to convince Admiral Rogers to come out and say publicly that there was no evidence at the present time of collusion between his campaign and Russia, something that he had pressed with Jim Comey as well.
All right, so we have Jim Comey meets with the president the first time and decides he's going to document every interaction. Obviously, NSA head Mike Rogers felt the same way. He felt the need to document it. So is his deputy with him at the time during this call with the president?
Yeah, so from what we understand, he was also privy to this call. This is the NSA deputy, Rick Leggett, who's a career NSA employee. And he wrote memos documenting, or at least one memo documenting that phone call between the president and NSA head Mike Rogers. And we understand that the Senate Intelligence Committee wants to get a hold of that memo, would like to have more information from Rick Leggett, who is the NSA deputy. He's since retired, on what transpired during that meeting, what the president asked Admiral Rogers to do, and what exactly was discussed.
This is quite a paper trail that's already being developed. If you're looking to build an obstruction of justice case, there's suddenly Comey memos and now Rogers memos.
Right. So what you would assume that Robert Mueller would do is look not only at the memos of that Jim Comey has already said that he submitted to him, but also look more broadly about what was the president asking other people in his administration to do and why.
There is one person in this sort of trio that you never hear about. We know the president apparently asked Dan Coats to do something. We know the president asked Mike Rogers to do something. It's hard to believe that he didn't also make a similar request to Mike Pompeo, head of the CIA, yet Mike Pompeo has somehow stayed out of this reporting.
I believe it has been reported that Mike Pompeo was in the meeting with Dan Coats. So in the meeting with Dan Coats where that was mentioned, I think the reporting said that everyone was asked to.
So it's inevitable, while they brought up, while there was the Coats and Rogers, it's inevitable that probably a similar request was made of Pompeo, and at some point he's going to be brought forward as well.
Right. I haven't seen any reporting on that, but certainly we know he was in the room with Dan Coats.
All right. Paul Sonny with yet another advancement in this story. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. From the Wall Street Journal. Folks, with the president under investigation for possible obstruction of justice, it's worth noting that Mr. Trump's closing argument in the 2016 election was that his foe, Hillary Clinton, not him, would be the subject of endless investigations.
Hillary is likely to be under investigation for many years, probably concluding in a criminal trial. The work of government would grind to a halt if she were ever elected. She'll be in court for her entire tenure. Hillary has engaged in a criminal, massive enterprise and cover-ups like probably nobody ever before. If she were to win, it would create an unprecedented constitutional crisis. We could very well have a sitting president under felony indictment and ultimately a criminal trial. Honestly, look, it's going to be virtually impossible for her to govern. The investigations into her crimes will go on for a long, long time.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.